Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion of People's Strategy Forum of leading experts discussing the recovery phase of COVID-19. My name is Shar Miller, and I'll be your host today. I'm a talent management consultant and a people strategist with CompTeam. I'm also the owner and founder of Rocky Mountain Health Advocate, and I'm also a career coach with HR with a Heart. I am very pleased to be co-sponsoring with Sam Reeve, who's the CEO and founder of CompTeam, and also with Lisa Jackson, who's a keynote speaker and culture change expert with Corporate Culture Pros. So I am very pleased today to introduce you to our today's panel. And also, you'll be able to review everyone's bios and extensive experience on the compteam.net website. You'll also be able to see the recording within that website as well. So thank you very much for joining us today and joining us during this continued conversation with top people experts on strategies and how to manage and thrive during the pandemic and beyond. So today I'll talk about the topics, very exciting topics. First of all, Julie Miller-Davis will be discussing getting unstuck in times of epidemic recovery. Also, we have Linda Rod that will be discussing innovation in chaos and creating opportunity and renewal. And then also we have Sam Reeve who'll discuss re-engaging your people with rewards. And then after our presentation, we'll have a formal wrap up. And during the presentation, each presentation will be approximately 15 minutes long with about 5 minutes of questions and answers. So before I hand over the mic to the panel, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover about this discussion on the Zoom webinar platform. First, today's discussion will be available again on demand after the session on compteam.net. And then we also have added some attachments and helpful resources and gifts for you during this presentation. So watch out for those. Then also you'll find the link to not only this webinar, the recording, but also all of our past webinars. We have an HR forum as well as a people strategy forum. And then also Sam will send a registration link to each of you for our future sessions that we'll have ongoing every week on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So today is a very interactive dialogue during our forum, People Strategy Forum. So you'll notice at the bottom of your screen is a chat section as well as a Q&A section. So we highly encourage you to be interactive, discuss some of your current challenges and questions, as well as any of your thought-provoking thoughts about what you're dealing with during this pandemic recovery phase. And then also, if we will attempt to answer as many of your questions during today's session, but if we're unable to answer those, each of us will follow up with you relevant to your topic and make sure that we address those. And then also, we just ask that you share this important free information, free resource with your networks and other business leaders, HR leaders, and people leaders. This is very helpful information. And then also we ask that you share on your social media icons and as well as any other formats. So without further ado, I'm super excited to get this session started. So our first speaker today is Julie Miller-Davis, who's discussing getting unstuck in times of epidemic recovery. Julie?
Good morning, everyone. I am Julie Miller-Davis, productivity expert, founder and CEO of JMD Productivity Training. And I am going to talk about getting unstuck in times of epidemic recovery. And before I do that, I would really like to ask you all a question. Actually, we have a poll for you to fill out or click on the boxes. And so I would like you to think about how you have been acting, reacting, responding during this time. So your questions that we're looking at is, where do you fit into this scenario right now? Are you working more than ever, and have you lost all sense of your boundaries and time? Or are you wandering around the house or office wondering what to do, where to start, and you've lost much of your spunk and motivation? Are you thriving? Are you more productive than ever? Or do you have no idea where you are or what day it is? Or at any time during any day, you might be experiencing multiple ones of these.
Great. So those results are coming in.
Thank you,
And
Sam.
I'll close the poll in about 5 seconds.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, ending the polling now. And let's share the results.
Thank you. Oh, this is really good information for me to have. So our hot one is number 1, which are letter A on my sheet, which is kind of where I think a lot of people are. You're working more than ever, and you've kind of let go of all your boundaries, and you're working all the time. And you may even be in this situation and not sure exactly what's happened to your life, to your day, to your structure. So that's really where I want to focus our time today. Thank you for sharing the poll results, Sam. I really appreciate that. So I want to hone in on a statistic here, which is that 40% of what we do every day is ingrained in routine, ingrained in habit, 40%. And so when all of this hit, what I can say is that 40%, probably 100% of our habits went out the window. All of our routines were disrupted. And so what's happened is we've dug in, most of us working at home, and we've never worked at home before. So we don't even have built-in breaks where we would normally get in our car to drive somewhere. We are on Zoom meetings, it seems like back to back to back to back to back, or we're trying to fit our work in between the Zoom meetings, and there's no breaks. And then we have nowhere to go at night, get in our car and go home, or grab dinner on the way home, or meet people out. And so we work into the night. And I know this is true for my family. What's been happening too is, and we've worked really hard to find some things, some common ground to bring us back together in the evenings. Once dinner is over, we do come together for dinner, but then we kind of retreat to our separate corners. So my 17-year-old is in his room, my husband's in his area downstairs watching TV, and I'm upstairs watching TV or working. And so actually I'm not working, that's my downtime. But what I'm finding is that a lot of people are experiencing these same issues. And for those of you who have never worked at home before, I know that you really aren't used to all the people being able to pop in on you at any given moment from your family, but you also just aren't taking those natural breaks that we usually get in the day. So I would like to talk to you about introducing some new routines into your life, into the way that you're conducting business. I know some of you are going back to the workplace starting this week. Some are not. Some are doing a hybrid. I'm not sure, where each of you is, but what I can tell you is no matter what you're doing this week, it's still not going to be what it used to be. And so how do we establish those routines? I would like you to think about dividing it into 3 segments, your day into 3 segments. If you could divide it into morning, into daily, and into end of day, I think it will really help you. And I was just reading some research on this as well, that when we talk about routines, when we talk about rituals, when we talk about habits, it's really important that each of those segments, the morning, the day, the end of day, and even in between there, as we change tasks and change meetings or whatever, that we actually have something that we do that signifies to our mind that one thing is ending and the other is beginning. Because if we don't do that, it takes us at least 20 minutes to figure out that we've left, for our brain, to figure out that we left one thing and we started another. And so I want you to think about that too, because we're wasting a lot of productive moments in our day, minutes in our day, when we're changing tasks, when we're changing whatever we're doing, we're losing 20 minutes if we don't let our brain know that we're moving. And it could be as simple as saying, hey, out loud to ourselves, I'm done with this now, I'm going to be moving on to this. We actively tell our brain that we're stopping one thing and starting another. It could be as simple as getting out of our chair and grabbing a cup of coffee and then coming back. So we broke it up. We didn't just like go from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. We are breaking it up. So let's just talk about morning routine. A lot of us have let that go. Some of you may have never really had one. Maybe you hit the ground running, took your shower, grabbed your cup of coffee and left the house and never really thought about what your day was going to look like because you went to work and you did what you do at work, right? So let's talk about morning routine. Number one, the most important thing that I think you can do is get out of bed at the same time every day, even if you don't have an office to go to, even if you don't. And I'm seeing all these chats come through, and I just want to thank you so much for the feedback, because in this format, you know, I don't have any nonverbal feedback from my eyes because I don't see you. And so I appreciate the chats coming in. It lets me know that you're here and that you're listening and that you're resonating. So getting out of bed at the same time every day, regardless if you have an office to go to, a place to be, a meeting to attend, get out of bed. I have made it really important for me to get out of bed between 7 and 7:30 every morning. It's not like I'm getting out of bed at like 7:08. So between 7 and 7:30 every morning, my feet are on the floor. I am out of my bed. I make my bed, and then I go, I have to putter. So I putter and have my cup of tea and play my Words of Friends game. And then, so whatever you do to just get moving, do that, but do it at the same time every day, at least Monday through Friday. So then, what do you do then? Get engaged in your day, whether that is just puttering, whether it is grabbing your cup of coffee, whatever it might be for you. But at some point in the first hour of your morning, before you get to work, before you engage, I know that it's hard for a lot of people to get to do an active, getting centered activity, but it could be as simple as just sitting and breathing in really intentional breaths 5 times. It could be just sitting down. I have a daily productivity planner that I created that I use, that I sit down and just do a brain dump on. Like, what are the things I feel like I need to do today? So what I'm doing is getting intentional about where I want to be today. What are the things I'm going to get done? Instead of flying by the seat of my pants, instead of putting out whatever fires might come my way, I'm getting intentional. So set your intention for the day. That's your morning routine. And decide, what time are you going to start working? Don't make it arbitrary. Don't make it whatever you feel like. What time are you going to start working? And it doesn't have to be the same time every day, depending on what you're doing and where you are. But today, when I set my intention for today, what time am I going to start working? And what time am I going to stop working? What time is my day finishing? Really important. So your daily routine. So that was the morning routine. Daily routine is broken up into the morning, early afternoon, and end of day. Morning, early afternoon, end of day. From Gary Keller and The One Thing, this is something that I've adopted as my own, is we have a finite amount of willpower in any day. And this is from his book, The One Thing. The hardest, biggest tasks should be done at the beginning of your day, in the morning, because our willpower fades and fades and fades as the day goes. And so we are less likely to get those big things done later in the day than we are at the beginning of the day. It's just fact. It's kind of like when we used to do homework, and if we saved our hardest homework for the end, the paper we had to write, the chemistry that was really hard for us, whatever it might have been, if we saved it for last, our brain was tired, we didn't do as good of a job on it. So if we've done it first, then it's out of the way. Yay, got it done. Now the rest of the day is cake, right? So, oh yeah, somebody's talking about the procrastination. So we've got to find ways to combat the procrastination. That's a whole other conversation, procrastination. And it's easy to do when we're at home, right? So setting those mini goals, setting mini steps to get things done, and taking breaks and giving ourselves rewards are all ways to get through our day. But I would like to talk about the morning, first thing you're going to do in the morning, what are you going to do in the afternoon, and then what are the last 3 things you're going to do at the end of the day? Okay. So, during your day, I cannot tell you what's going to happen in your morning, in your early afternoon, and in your evening. But if you can create some routines within those routines, you're going to be a lot better off. And don't forget to take those little breaks in between those, telling your brain that you're moving from one thing to the next, getting up, going out of your office, coming back to your office. Even if you're returning to work this week, guys, it's the same thing at your job. It's the same thing at your workplace, because things are not going to be the same. All the people are not going to be there that were there before. All the things that you were doing before aren't the things that you're going to be doing. So let's find a way to create some new rituals, new routines within that. So the other thing I would say, if you're working at home, if you could find a way during the day, I think it's really important to find a way, number 1, to move. Number 1, to move. Number 2, to connect with people. And I don't mean on Zoom. I mean, it could be on Zoom. I don't mean in a Zoom meeting. I mean, connect with people. So maybe you take a lunch break, and that's important. I want you to take a lunch break. We work through lunch I know a ton of people who've been working through lunch, working through everything. They're not getting out of their chair. So get out of your chair, go to another room, eat some lunch, even if it's 15 minutes, and maybe call a friend while you eat. Like, let's have lunch together today. But don't do it on your FaceTime on your computer where you've been having meetings. Break it up. Maybe you just put your phones on speaker and you just have a conversation while you eat together. Maybe you get on FaceTime on your phone. Like, move your environment, move yourself to take that break. And to connect in a human way with somebody during the day, because we do that normally. We hug, we meet, we go to networking meetings, we see people at work, we're shaking hands. So we have to find a new way to connect, and it's really important to do that. I think my time is just about up. The last thing that we need to do is talk about the end of day. We already talked about what time you will finish. Deciding what time you are going to be done with work is really important. Decide at the beginning of the day what time you're done. You might decide every day, I'm done at 5:36, whatever it is. But that means you're done, you guys. Do not come back to it after dinner. Finish it, okay? And then choose 3 things that let your brain and your body know it's the end of the workday. 3 things. What will you do at the end of the day? Will you answer final emails? Will you write down 3 successes that you had today? Will you make a plan? Like, what are the first 3 things you want to do tomorrow? Like, will you just make a note for tomorrow? That's okay too. But what are the 3 things that you will do to finish your day so your brain and your body know that it's done? Really, really important there. The only last thing I'll say is if you can integrate a little time outside every day, because we're not even walking to our cars, some of us, right? We're not even going in the garage to turn on the car. Like, so if you could go walk around the block, if you have 5 minutes, if you could go out and just take a breath, drink a cup of tea, coffee, whatever, go outside. It will really help your brain power, help you reset, and help you come back in to the next task with that much more vigor and motivation. I hope that this has helped you. I have a free gift for all of you that I would love for you to take advantage of. It's a 3-part video series, and you can go to juliemillerdavis.com/focus, and you'll get an infographic first, and then 3 videos will follow. They're each about 5 minutes long or less, and you'll get those in the next 3 days, over the next 3 days, and they're pretty good information. They'll get you focused, they'll keep you going, and help you kind of think about how you can do things differently as things are changing and going differently. And you feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. I'm under Julie Miller Davis on LinkedIn as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Char.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so I have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
So I love that you spoke to more of a personal standpoint about time management, productivity and efficiencies. So do you think that this is also helpful for employers to give this type of tools, tips for their employees?
Thank you for asking that question. I think that, yes, I think that things are not going to go back to how they were. And I think that it's really important because I think sometimes we get so on, like I talked about at the beginning, we're on rote, right? We're just doing things because that's how we've always done them. And that's just what we do. And we don't think about it. 40% of our day is stuff we don't think about. We don't think about driving when we're driving. Like we just do it. And we're the same way at work. And so I think if we can start making people, especially as times are changing and as the pandemic has shifted us, some people will be splitting work between a place of business and home, and how do employers help their employees adapt and adjust? Absolutely, help them figure out what is their routine now. How are they going to get productive? Because it's also really easy. I didn't even get it. We could talk a whole thing. Char, you've heard me talk about when you're totally disrupted at home because the dryer is dinging and people are coming in and knocking on the door, and your son needs money and he needs to tell you where he's going, and all that stuff happens. And so how do we navigate that?
Right.
And I think that it can be really helpful for employers to engage their employees in some mindful, intentional thinking about how is their day going to unfold now that it's not how it ever was.
Right.
I have a question real quick for you, Julie. I know that, when we're thinking about the work environment and what's been going on, these productivity tips are really helpful because what's happening with employees now is that before the pandemic, we were in the office situation or at the normal work situation, and we figured that out, how to be productive there. And now we're at home and we're working that out at home. And now we're getting ready to go to the back to work scenario where we may go into an office where only half the people are there. And so we're doing a little bit of both. We're still reaching out to people at home. We're still in the office setting. So it seems to me that we need to establish what is productivity and what are the work tips that we need to think about in each of those environments as we get into those. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think that it's really, I just saw somebody write that my thing was turned off, so I am writing to my web designer right now. Sorry, I wrote to him this morning, but there we go. Hopefully it will be turned on in a second.
No procrastination going on there.
Don't forget me, everybody. So Sam, I think that I think it comes back to, again, how do we navigate a new way to connect at work even? And because a lot of us did go to work and had our routine and had what we did, but we also had the same people around us in the same fashion, and they were all also operating in the same way. And so I think it again comes back to intention and mindfulness and knowing that things are going to be different, and now figuring out what are the new habits, what are the new routines, and what are the new ways to be productive. And I have a lot of stuff that I talk about regarding what are the things that are going to drive move the needle forward. What are the things that are going to make you know that you accomplished something at the end of the day, and that you weren't just pushing papers, and that you weren't just doing the things that were coming at you as they were coming at you. So sort of, I call it knee jerking your way through the day. Like you're doing stuff without thought or intention, just as it comes at you, because you don't really know where to start or what to do. And so if we can get really mindful about what are the goals for the day, for the week, for the month, and start aligning our activities along with that. And also as employers, helping our employees align with that as well. I think that it can really change the focus, not only when they're in the office, but also at home. And keeping in mind that it's still important to find ways for the people in the workplace to connect with each other on in this new environment, because those relationships are so important, because that helps us come together to drive towards the common goal of the company, right? And stay in alignment with that. Is that answering your question? Oh, I can't hear you, Sam.
You're on mute.
One other thing I noticed is that you pulled out, you were showing us your productivity planner that you use daily. Do you have a version of that that companies can use with their employees? Is that something that you provide?
Actually, there's a downloadable version of this. And what I would love to do is anyone wants to connect with me and we could talk about how to adapt it to their business and as a manager, I would love to, because it does go through your daily brain dump. What are your non-negotiables? What are the big 3 things outside of your non-negotiables in order to reach your daily goals? Yes, I have these and it's downloadable on my website. It's one of the very first things that pops up on my website to download a printable version of it. And then I have a webinar that I teach how to maximize it. But I can also adapt it to, after I speak to someone, what are the issues that they're facing, what are their goals, and how do we make this or some version of this work for them.
Do we have time for one more question?
Sure.
So I wanted to just call this comment out from Erin, and because I think this is something that I'm seeing with my clients as well, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, Julie. She said it's just so difficult to shut off, that earlier narrative around at the end of the day. I worry about our employees, their emotions and safety. So it's difficult not to be available or constantly researching best practices and ideas. So you've kind of spoken generally to that, but that's a big deal, where as leaders in HR and in particular, that whole, how do we shut off the worry, the concern, the feelings of how can I support the employees and their returning to work?
I actually think that, so I work on my own. I'm a solopreneur. I have contract 1099 employees that work for me with me. What I can speak to with this question, Lisa, it's a really good question and it's really thoughtful. I can speak to what's been happening with my son's school. My son goes to a private school and now he goes home to go to school. But the president of our school every single evening sends an email with just an update and with some motivational things to help and a check-in, like how are you doing, and here's some questions to ask, and here's some tips, and here's a website to help you stay healthy of mind, to stay motivated. And I think that could be one thing, Lisa, honestly, as a leader of an organization that someone could do. And I know it takes some time to put together, but if they heard from you every day, just a quick snippet of, here's an update, and by the way, if you need to know, make sure your resources are viable, credible resources that you're listening to about things. So here are the credible resources for you to tap into to get information from the government, from the health organizations or whatever. And by the way, I would love, and even ask, I would love to know how you're feeling. And feel free to send me an email. And as a leader, you can shut off knowing that you have done the best that you can do. You have controlled what you can control to help keep your employees healthy and well-being in mind. And that you have also let them know that you're available, but that you're reaching out and letting them know consistently where things stand, where they stand, and how to help them. I hope that that's helpful. It's something that's been really helpful for us to get those emails every day from the president of the school.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Julie. That was very helpful. I'm going to have to take a look at your website and get some tips myself. So thank you so much. So that was.
Thank you, everybody. I just really appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you. So now we're going to talk about innovation and chaos, which I think all of us are going, as we've heard the word VUCA, a chaotic type of a time. So how do we create opportunity and renewal? So Linda Rod, would you like to take it away on that topic?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shar. And first, I just want to say, Julie, I really appreciated what you said. And for me, taking away, it's really about that routine. It's about creating boundaries, bookends, and taking care of myself. So the connection, both to myself and others, was a great idea. So here we are. Here we are, COVID-19. And for many of us, it has changed the way our world operates. It has created chaos, opportunity. It's had an incredible impact on each of us. And so what I want to talk about is really how do we create opportunity and renewal out of chaos? And so want to ask you to take a poll. And in the poll, I'm going to ask you really about what impact has COVID-19 had on you personally. And so you can choose your top 3. There are quite a few answers here, and there might be other impacts as well. But what has been the impact of COVID-19 on you? Okay, so here are your possible answers, and it might be that there are other ones as well. And so as you look at those answers, these are what many people are experiencing. Very different perspective around COVID-19 as an opportunity for renewal or chaos and destruction, as well as grief. And so sometimes all 3 of those things or many more can happen simultaneously. So we're going to look at this poll, and if you would answer, and I know, Sam, thank you so much for running this poll for us.
Sure. The answers are coming in right now, so I'll go ahead and give this 5 more seconds here.
Yeah. So think about this, relating it to what Julie said as a disruption, right? You have had this routine down, and now there's been a major disruption about the way you work, about the way you live, about the way you connect and add value. So look at this. When we look at the impact of COVID, it has been huge. And anywhere from losing money to experiencing stress, fear, uncertainty, over half of you said that that was real for you. Some of you have lost a loved one or an acquaintance. And so that grief takes on a whole nother complexion and complexity for you. Having more time with my family. For me, the bookend is 5 p.m. at night. And then my daughter and I go for a 3.5-mile walk every night. And it just clears everything. We talk about our day. We talk about what worked well. And so for many of you, having that time has actually been a gift. But for others, maybe this has been so much uncertainty that it's hard to deal with and to know where to go next. So for half of you, you've had more time to slow down. You get to work from home for more than half of you, but you know that many others don't. They still go into work. Some of you have lost your job, and then others have been able to reconnect in a different way with loved ones. I know for me, doing Zoom family reunion calls has become a thing. And doing coaching and dancing with my fellow coaches has also become a thing. So I think there might be one more answer. Hopefully you can see that down there as well. For others, you've been laid off or furloughed. And so the impact of COVID-19 has had a major disruption. And my daughter had told me, do not say unprecedented one more time, Mom. Don't do it. Don't go there. So it's had an impact, and it might be positive or it might be negative. So let's talk about this disruption, because this disruption in your routine actually can lead to change and transformation. So if you'd go to the next slide, Sam. So what to expect? This is just kind of a comical look at the change process, but you can expect that things have changed based on the impact it's had on you, and it's impacted others. And so for me, it could be an opportunity plus fear at the same time. For others, it could be grief. Grief about their old lifestyle, grief about someone they've lost, fear about getting the disease and with having different issues that come up for that. And so what to expect during change. Recognize what's happening for you, the impact it's had, and what you're going through. Being able to actually name it is a first step in taming it in the change process. And so we had this old routine, and now everything's been disrupted. And we've seen that this disruption has had a major impact on people. And so it leads to chaos, and potentially it leads to renewal. And so let's talk about what we start with when we think about renewal and the change process. Actually, what it starts with is our mindset. And so your perspective is your belief system. It's your attitude. It's what you operate from, that operating system. You know, when I look back and think about some of the biggest times of change in my life, whether it was chaos or fear or grief, it led to some new perspectives. It actually helped me get clarity. And so when you see this picture here, what is your perspective? And I often think about one of my favorite poems, which is, two men looked up from prison bars, one saw mud and one saw stars. For me, that has been my mantra about perspective. It doesn't mean always seeing the stars. It means acknowledging both the mud and the sky. Seeing where I'm currently at, being grounded, and yet having a vision, having a dream. And so what's your perspective? What's your perspective during this time? That's going to help drive you or put you in a place of fear. And so let's talk a little bit more about that from more of a organizational perspective. So we know in times of organizational change, like many of you have experienced, we need a way forward. We need a way to renew and transform. And so some of the best ideas about organizational change come from people like, and personal change, come from people like William Bridges, John Kotter. And what Kotter says is that in organizational change, we need that disruption. We need that sense of urgency. And really having a powerful vision and people with us, a guiding coalition that who can question us, who can provide input, who can be there with us, is what drives forward change and transformation. So when we have that vision, we want to communicate it. It's not enough for me to have it in my head, which sometimes happens. It's more important to share it. And when I share it, then I get ideas and input and people are invested. And so I communicate it and I keep communicating it. And it's almost like a piece of clay or art that we're starting to look at. What's the opportunity here? What's the opportunity for renewal? And so what you want to do is create some short-term wins around that and make sure that if you're really working on your culture or maybe yourself in your work, don't declare victory too early. Celebrate the small ends, but continue on that path with your vision. And so really you want to embed the different changes that you make in your culture. Let's get a little bit more realistic on this. So going to the next slide, there are some questions that you can ask that really impact your ability to change, renew, and transform. And so we've seen during this time right now that visions are changing. Visions are changing for organizations and for people in their work. What is it that actually provides value during this time and looking forward? And so we've seen different companies capitalize on this. I don't know about you, but Amazon goes past my house probably about 10 times a day. We've seen different companies that have just sprouted up their value. So being clear about your vision and your purpose. And really your purpose is like your mission. It's why, what you do. What do you do? How do you provide value? And during this time, understanding that our adaptability and change is so important to us. So how do I adapt? How do I pivot? How do I gain a new perspective? so that it serves the people who are my customers and my employees. The other thing you want to do is really invite, include, and innovate. What do I mean by this? I mean invite your stakeholders, all those people who have a stake in what you're doing. Ask them, what do you see that's valuable right now that we do? What should we be saying no to and change? What can we be more efficient on? I'm working with one client right now who going back to the office is a question of why are we going back to the office? For what purpose? And it's changing the way people think about the workplace and the value they provide. So the other thing is to really identify 3 steps that can move you in that direction. And so what are 3 steps to help you move in that direction? And the way we look at this is we look at it from a change perspective around what's happening now, what's a perspective, what's a reality, how am I grounded in that mud? What are the weaknesses and where are the opportunities? What can we do even better right now? What can I do even better? What are the threats I see? Does it change what my mission or purpose is in what I do? So identifying 3 steps right now can be one of the best things you can do. So just like Julie had said, manageable chunks. Seeing the vision and where I'm going and how to get there. 3 steps. They can be small, they can be large. Identifying 3 steps that will move me in the direction of my vision or my dream is what's important right now. It's not actually about doing more. It's about getting clarity and focus about the vision and lining everything up. And so let's look at the next step. And this you can actually use as a little bit of an action plan for you with your 3 steps. Oh, sorry, Sam. Yep, we're going to the next one. So going to the next slide, 3 steps that you can take is really critical in organizational renewal. And when you think about that, thinking about your vision, think about what value I'm providing. What is it that people really can use right now? Just like a forest that has undergone a fire, what we do is go in and we clean out the underbrush. We get rid of the things that really keep us in a place of destruction or chaos. After we clean out the underbrush, we start to see that there are things that start to grow. What are those things? That's your value. And as you start to grow your value, you want to make sure that value is in balance with your relationships. And so the way you renew and reach your vision is to make sure you're clear about what you do and the value you provide and cultivate your relationships. I worked with one team on some team coaching recently, and at first they were really hesitant. They said, why should we be working on our relationship right now? We're all virtual. We're not in the office. And actually right now is a perfect time to do that. So really evaluating your vision, your value, and your relationships. Questioning what those 3 steps are to take you in that direction. And so what I'd like to do is to ask you another question. What can you do to really renew your value in your relationships? And so when I ask you, and I forgot to lead this up in the beginning, but I want to ask you, what is one step that you can take? What's one step you can take right now? And we have a poll, and Sam, I know you're going to bring up the poll for us. So what can you do right now, one step, to really increase your value and what you provide, as well as your relationships? And so Sam, do you mind bringing up that second poll?
Sure, bringing that up right now. I think that's
awesome. So in the polls, you're going to see that these are actually ideas as well, and you might have others. But here are some things you can do to renew your value in what you provide others and your relationships. So take a look at these, and if you would, just one thing that you can do right now. As you're doing that, I want to mention, because I don't think we briefly talked about perspective taking, but perspective taking is actually trying on a perspective that is different than mine. And so if I'm feeling stuck, if I'm feeling miserable, I'm going to actively practice a different perspective. And it could be a perspective someone else has, or just the opposite of what I currently have. I'm actually going to value my relationships by engaging more with those I work in. Sharing my vision and then asking for input and listening, perfect. Asking customers what's important to them. What's important to you right now? Right now, what would bring value? Being present and actually reflectively listening to others, another key area. Understanding what my stakeholders' challenges are, and then paying attention to what others are trying to tell me. So let's look at the poll and see where we're at. And I love this. Lots of spread out on things that you can do, one step. And I see there being present and reflectively listening to others. Absolutely. The best thing I can do, especially if someone else has a problem, is to listen to them. And that means leaning in and actually hearing the person, both their words, their emotions, as well as their nonverbals. And so these are things you can do right now. And thank you, Sam, for sharing that. Hopefully everyone can see that. And then finally, I just want to share with you that there are steps we can take in the midst of this. And it's probable that you have lots of different impacts from COVID-19 and the chaos that it has created. And now what you do with that, from your perspective to the questions to the steps that you can take, is going to determine your own renewal. Because honestly, for leaders and leaders of even myself, knowing that I can take some steps helps give me control, especially during times of change. So I want to give a gift to you. During the COVID-19 and this summer, I'm offering, as well as a collective of coaches that I work with, 3 different coaching sessions, complimentary. And it really is bound by, are you being challenged? Do you want to expand more of your own renewal? And so email me and I'll send you some information. But there are 3 complimentary sessions that I'm offering as a gift to everybody on the webinar, and really hope you use this crisis and chaos to improve and renew your own self and where you want to be. So thank you for that. And I didn't look at the time, so I'm a little bit like, oh no.
Fine, you're totally fine. You know, I just have to share this because I love your slides. They're absolutely beautiful. There are 2 images that really resonate with me. One is the butterfly, and the second one is the snail. I think the snail's so cute. But here's the deal. With my company at first, when we started having all the chaos at the beginning, around end of March, I have to admit that I was getting really frustrated with my co-team members, my leadership team, not to say anything about certain people. But I got really frustrated because I am the innovator, right? So I'm constantly coming up with all these new ideas. I'm constantly thinking about the future. I'm constantly trying to innovate something different. And I felt like some of my team members were like, no, we're going to focus on the key aspects of our operations. And we're going to go not necessarily back to normal, but we're not going to create new things and get new opportunity out there. So I felt like I was getting frustrated because maybe I was feeling like, well, then they're being a snail and I'm being a butterfly. But at the same time, I looked this up this morning as I was looking at your presentation. The snails do provide value, right? Because it's part of the ecosystem. They're very important in the garden, right? as well as the butterflies. So it's interesting as you're leading through the chaos, I think, to have patience with one another because people deal with change differently, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So,
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly right. Everybody's in a different place. And sometimes multiple perspectives and places all at the same time, right?
So if we're self-aware during that time and just remember that, particularly right now, both sides of that is very important. So Lisa, Sam, Julie, do you have any other follow-up questions? Oh, I think you're on mute, Julie.
No, I didn't have any questions, but Linda, I just wanted to tell you that what I absolutely resonated with me and that I loved was that analogy that you have with the forest fire and how we have to clean out all of that dead and the stuff that burned down in order to bring up find the new and find things that are going to come up that never came up before. And it's more lush and more beautiful than it might have been before. And you and I sent you a message because you and I speak a lot of the same speak as far as this goes. And I just really appreciate you having people find what can they do to connect, what can they do to get through this time of change and chaos and come out the other side better than how they came in. It doesn't have to be hopeless. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's outstanding. And I would also mention, Lisa also talked a lot about our nature metaphors in our last, or I think it was a couple weeks ago, right, Lisa? And so if anybody wants to go back to some of those recordings, those were really great as well.
Yeah, that was funny, Linda. It was funny to see your forest metaphor because I used one almost exactly that a few weeks ago. One of the things that I wanted that really resonated as we're talking about that is this idea with the forest that this renewal actually happens in a forest recovery in stages where certain parts of the forest regrow in stages. And I thought that was, you didn't say that necessarily directly, but it is, I think a really important thing to relate to and understand for all of us that we can't do it all at once. We're not going to necessarily grow the trees back before we create some of the more foundational soil renewal elements. And so, you know, that patience factor, I think, is another piece around this renewal that, you know, if those of us who are achievement oriented or ambitious, it feels like, at least to me, that I kind of, oh, I have to do it all at once. I have all these ideas, you know, and then, but really looking through that lens of what is the first step that I can build on, you know, and being willing to have some patience with that process. So.
Well, I love that, Lisa, because, you know, standing firm on the ground that you're on and actually using that to say, where am I at right now? Right? Where am I at right now? What feels sure and what do I know versus what do I not know? And then having that vision about where I want to be, right? And having some purpose behind it. We know that this is what engages a lot of people, ourselves and other employees. So really having that purpose and vision and knowing what I do. What do I do? Where do I provide value? And what are the relationships that I have? What are stages or steps to get us to move in that direction? And someday, some other video I'd love to share with you about my BS story, which is really what are the stories I tell myself that keep me from achieving my dream or my vision. And so identifying that and putting it to the side and then taking a couple steps forward. That's how we can really move in a good direction. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. Great conversation around people strategy. It's really good to collaborate. And thank you all for giving us your chats and your comments and questions. It's excellent. So looking at our time, I'd like to move to our next topic. And first of all, I just want to say, this is Sam Reeve. He is the CEO of CompTeam, and he has partnered and championed with me from, gosh, in our last contract all the way to creating these free HR forums and people strategy forums. And thank you, Sam. You've been quite the leader in this space. So we just want to thank you. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Sam Reeve, who is going to share his ideas around re-engaging our people with rewards. Sam?
Great. Thanks, Shar, for that introduction. So yes, lots of things to talk about here. And one of the things that we're going to be discussing today is going through these steps here. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the importance of the business ecosystem. We've been making nature references, and I've taken that a step further on this as well. And the next is understanding how there's been a shift in the workforce value proposition. We're going to talk a little bit about this. What is the workforce value proposition? That is the reason why people work for you. So why do they work for you and versus somebody else? And then we're going to talk about a couple effective reward solutions in this space as well. And then of course, I have my own free gift I want to offer you as well to help you and the companies out there get back on track. So let's talk about the first thing, the business ecosystem. So you need to think of your business as as involved with your company. Of course, you have your company, you have your customers that you're concerned about, and then also you have your coworkers, so the people that you hire. So each group is critical to ensure that the business survives and thrives. And it's one thing that's important to understand is that if one of these groups is weak or underserved, then the other groups will suffer as well, just like an ecosystem. So I call this a three-legged stool. And as we all know about three-legged stools, if one is short or whatever, you get wobbly. And so, but this is a simplified version of the service profit chain that was released by Harvard Business School, Heskett and Sasser, I think, in the early 2000s. But what leaders need to understand here is that continued investment in people is critical for business growth. But here's the problem with that. So as we know, employee pay and benefits costs can be as high as 70% of a lot of companies' expenses, depending on your industry. But any way you cut it, human capital expenses are often the largest costs that most businesses are looking at, and they're tempting for cost cutting, right? So it's true that labor costs are recorded in the expense and cost of goods sold on the income statement, but the people cost is very different than other costs in the expense column. Why? Is because people have memories, right? If you lay off people, if you treat them poorly, they're going to either tell their friends, and that's going to come back and reflect poorly on your business. It's going to be more difficult for you to recruit and retain people in the future. So even your best competitors out there, they're thinking of people as an investment. So you may be thinking, well, what if we just cut our low performers? So even doing that in this type of a situation, COVID-19 and the pandemic, it's a violation of trust. And so your other employees, even if the so-called survivors and survivor guilt that they have, will also feel this as well. The fact that they could be next if they weren't involved in this discussion. And so be very careful about this. So I'm going to talk about other methods that are possible. But so what are other possible answers to the cost cutting? So it's about optimizing your compensation and benefits investment, and you want to do this to match what your workforce values and what drives performance. So an average client with about 500 employees can save over $450,000 a year. And at the same time, they can offer more engaging, more meaningful awards to the workforce during this time. So there are options here instead of cutting, and it's a matter of ensuring or optimizing what you're offering to your workforce. And so we'll go through that in detail. And it all starts with this analysis, what I call the workforce experience scorecard. Now, this is a diagnosis tool that helps you understand the strengths and weaknesses of your employee value proposition. And what it tells you is how should we be targeting compensation and benefits and all those other talent programs to ensure that we're delivering the best value and that's most impactful for your company. And so it starts with this. How do we look at this? We look at the factors of motivation, and this is how we empower each other to succeed. And this is built up of a couple pillars here: vision, leadership, direction, teamwork. Vision is where the company is going. And in the COVID-19 crisis, that has shifted for a lot of companies. And so we need to relook at that. How has our company, our vision shifted? I have a biotech client that they decided to focus on the COVID-19 problem. And that means they had to drop some other things out of their portfolio. And so, but what happens to the employees that came to work there because of those particular projects? Now there's a bit of a disconnect, right? So we need to consider that. The next is leadership. Do we trust our leadership to get us to the vision? Direction. How well do we get the goals that's disseminated across the company? Can I influence a company's success? And how important is teamwork? And how well do we work together throughout the company? The next is factors of engagement. So how well we work together for success. And in these, we include empowerment, impact, personal value, fulfillment. So empowerment is how our managers enable employees. They remove those obstacles. Impact is how well an employee can contribute and feel like everything that they do is heard or makes an impact on the customer and the company. Personal value is how well my personal values are aligned to the values of the company. If there's a disconnect there, there's probably a problem in the hiring process and so forth. So things we need to think about there. Fulfillment. How well can I achieve my career goals and life goals by working here? And then finally, we have the reward pieces. And this is how company, customers, and coworkers work together and they share in success. So the factors here are culture, development, recognition, comp, and benefits. Culture, so Lisa's core expertise. And this is, depending on how well we have designed culture, this is how the company, customers, and coworkers interact together to advance in common interests. Lots of C's there, I know. That's having an effective culture is not having the ping pong table or the foosball table or free lunches. It's having something purposeful that drives the advancement of the company forward and delivers more cohesion in that three-legged stool concept: your customers, coworkers, and the company. Then we have development. How much we're investing in our employees, recognition, how much we acknowledge, not only from a company perspective, but how our peers across the company acknowledging each other for the work that they do. And then finally, compensation and benefits. This is meeting the needs of the workforce. Now, one thing I want to point out is compensation and benefits is just one pillar in this piece. And the reason is because we need to make sure that compensation is correct and benefits is correct. And we can use some elements there to focus behaviors, but it's really dependent on all these other things. They need to be in alignment and to work well based on our development as a company for those compensation and programs to be effective. And so let me talk about that real quick here. This is an example of how the scorecard could be used to where we're pointing out strengths and weaknesses in the company. So strengths here are shown in green, weaknesses are red, and yellow is kind of like way in between there. So in this particular example, the company is, they have strong vision and leadership. They have great leaders and people are excited to work together. But there's some problems in the dissemination of goals and so forth. Now the company's doing a great job of enabling people to do some of their best work, but it looks like some of the problems here is that they've kind of hired the wrong people for the job. I mean, their personal values aren't quite aligned with the company values, and there's not a whole lot of opportunities for career advancement, for instance, in the company, and it's taking a lot of their personal time. Maybe they have a problem with their work-life balance. And then as you notice in the rewards equation here, there's some problems here too. They don't really have, they're not strong with development. Everybody's nose to the grindstone as far as culture and recognition. Nobody is recognizing each other. The company's not recognizing, and individuals are not, patting each other on the back for the great work that they do. So what does the company have to do? Well, they have to pay for pain in this example. So that's why we have comp and benefits as green, and it's probably super green. These people are probably paying in the 75th percentile of the marketplace because these other factors are weak. They have to pay more to keep that talent there and compensate them for the hard work that they're doing. So in companies that are looking to optimize this, we need to make sure that we're developing in these other areas and that we can have the appropriate pieces together to have certain pay programs. For instance, you can't have a incentive plan, an effective incentive plan, unless you're tracking metrics effectively and you're providing direction to the workforce. In this new environment that we have where people are working at home, we've been disruptive, and performance is harder to do. We have to figure that out, as we figured out and we've learned in our Julie's presentation. Somebody's moved the cheese, for instance, and the environment is different. And so we need to figure out how to be successful in that environment. And also goals have changed too. The company has metrics that are, different. We all expected that we're going to do great at the beginning of the year, and now the market is disrupted. So we have to look at our metrics and change our goals to accommodate. So have we done that as a company? That's very important. So let's go through some effective solutions really quick. What are companies doing out there right now, given the COVID-19 environment? Well, most of them are thinking about, well, there's been a disruption here. What should we do about pay increases? What should we do about our bonuses? A lot of companies are delaying those into later in the year. Companies that have already paid them out and the beginning of the year are thinking about what they're going to do next year. But those that have programs in April and mid-year are saying, okay, well, maybe we need to wait and see. We need to see how we recover and the pace of recovery. In some of our past presentations that we had, I think it was last week, we were talking about the curves of how fast our industry is going to recover and how other industries may recover slower. So consider that when you're looking at your base pay increases and what you can afford. Make sure you're careful there. The next thing is leaders. A lot of leaders, since they're doing a base pay deferral or waiting to delay that, they're thinking about, okay, well, we got to do something as well. So a lot of those leaders are taking temporary pay cuts. And so we'll talk about what that looks like in just a moment. Other pieces out there is the people are switching cash for equity. If you have a long-term incentive program, that's a way to alleviate some cash pressures. And then also some companies are taking their sales force to a commission only. But I'm a little concerned about that. That is only appropriate for certain industries. And so we'll discuss that a little bit further here in the next few slides. Right now, I want to tell you about a particular story of a company and how they're handling their situation. This is a Utah technology company. They have about 700 employees, and the leadership announced that they were going to delay or forego pay increases for this year. And so, of course, that's bad news for their employees. But they also announced that the rest of the leadership team would not be taking a salary for the remainder of the year. So they're basically going to zero. Now, they also announced that they're going to award special stock grants to their key individuals and so forth, to those key individuals to ensure that they maintain high performance, and also challenge them to innovate to get the company back on track as fast as possible. When I say innovate, that means that we need to realize that our customers have a bit of a shift as well as this. They're thinking about different things. What does that mean for our products and our services that we're providing? We need to have our people out there thinking about those things. So now, so I have a lot of questions on temporary salary cuts. And if you're thinking about doing that, we need to offer alternatives as well. not only a certain segment of the industries or companies out there are thinking about this. So it's not a major trend. I don't want to think that this is a major trend, but some companies are really forced to do some sort of salary cuts. So if you're going to do that, how to do this effectively? Well, the first thing is that the leadership should take the brunt of this. And that's what this triangle is trying to show. The leadership takes the brunt. The middle management is more of a modest approach. And then we're trying to insulate the lower level employees that are more sensitive to pay as much as possible. So there's things we can do, like I mentioned before, with leadership. We can exchange some of that cash pay that they were getting for long-term incentives, something that's going to pay out over the long term. And then for our middle management and those high-level professionals, perhaps we're thinking about more project completion bonuses. We're taking away the annual bonus program for if you have one, and thinking about focusing those into those specific needs, those projects that are critical to get back on track and to have success for the company. So those are the things. Now, your lower level employees, maybe consider recognition program. Think about those intrinsic motivators and saying thank you, providing them with special gifts that you maybe send home to say thank you, or with their family. Some companies are doing gift cards. Some companies are sending meals home to reward families with. And then other special bonus or spot bonus awards for exhibiting the hard lifting that they may be doing. The next thing is, like I mentioned, about sales plans. So if you have a sales group and it's critical that you reevaluate these plans. Of course, there's been a shock not only to our sales staff, but also to the marketplace. And we need to think about how are we going to evaluate or reevaluate those sales targets. This definitely moved. So in most situations, those have been, our objectives should be toned down. If you're Zoom meeting, maybe it goes up, right? There's certain industries that have benefited a lot from this stay-at-home movement or the safety and piece like this, that their sales targets may be increasing, but many of industries out there, it's actually been decreasing. So here we're going to look at, if you have threshold performance levels, this may be a time to relax those a bit. I mean, because we don't know how well people are going to be able to be successful in this environment. So you might want to remove those thresholds or lower them, those performance thresholds in a sales plan, and allow people to start earning from $1. And make sure that the payout curve is a little bit more forgiving, so that people can earn the cash they need. Now, this is all based upon the type of company you're in. Like, for instance, we did mention before that you could have just shift to all commissions, and it really depends on your company. So you have to think about that and take this in consideration. The next is reevaluating your sales metrics. So sometimes, you might not be able to sell at all during this, but you want to make sure that your sales force is engaging with the right activities. So perhaps you're taking away the metrics from your sales or how many units you're selling or revenue, and you're moving it to activities, making sure people are engaged in the right type of activities, reaching out to the client base, checking out and seeing how they're doing, and so forth, and providing maybe some special incentives around that. Other thoughts are to move from team to company goals instead, or move to team or company goals instead of individual type goals. That's another way to reinnervate and say that we're all in this together, because we are. Other facts here is retention for those top performers. Right now, great salespeople can work anywhere, and you may lose some of your top performers to those industries that are on the uptrend right now that hasn't been impacted. So think about how you can retain those people. And then for those developing individuals, think about ways to help them develop. So whether they're some non-recoverable draws or making sure that their pay is a little bit insulated as they ramp up, because the environment is significantly different. So here's another quick question, or not a question, but a example of one of my clients. So it's a Colorado company in CPG, consumer goods, and they have almost about 1,000 people, 75-person sales force. Now, they had this outstanding onboarding and sales training program. You know, it was all live, and the whole industry knew about it. They're like, oh, these guys really know how to do it. But suddenly now they had to shift all that to remote, and they've never done that before. And so they had to make this change very quickly. And they knew there was going to be fits and starts and so forth of training their workforce in a remote environment. So reps weren't set up with systems. Nobody knew how to do their job from home. They're used to going to the customer sites and so forth. And so they wanted to keep these people engaged. And so what they did is they relaxed their sales ramp up time. And like I said, reducing those or removing the thresholds of performance to allow people to get trained up in that new remote environment. And as they created these onboarding programs and trainings. So, and also quotas were adjusted during this time frame as well. So take that in consideration. Benefit costs. So this is how we can save significantly here. So look at refocusing and prioritizing benefits, such as, the benefits that were coveted before the pandemic are a bit different now. So we need to look for how to refit that to the workforce. The next thing is look for efficiencies in your benefit practices. So right now, with the pandemic, a lot of your benefit costs are probably going to go up significantly next year. So it's important for us to think ahead and prepare for practices that are going to generate savings. And a lot of companies don't realize, but there's some practices that you can do without impacting employees that you can gain up as much as $75 per month per employee. And so that can be a significant amount of cost savings without employee impact. So if you're interested in finding ways there, reach out to me. I'll show you some techniques. The next is of course eliminating things that you don't need. The fringe benefits, perks, 401k match, if that is necessary. Typically it's small wins there, but you have to see what that means for your company. All right, another example here, a story. This is a Bay Area technology company of about 100 employees. When the employees went to a work-at-home situation, they canceled their work lunch program, and they had other low-utilized ancillary benefits. And one of their employees came to the company asking for help, and they were asking for a bonus advance because her mom just lost her job as a pastry chef at a local restaurant, and she couldn't afford to pay her mortgage. And so the company, instead of just giving her a bonus advance, created a pool, a grant program to help their employees in needs. And so this grant program gave grants out to employees of about $2,000 to $5,000, and they can come back and if they needed more and so forth. And this wasn't expected to be paid back. And it was so successful that other employees in the company that were stable wanted to contribute to the fund. So it was a good way to provide culture, improvement in culture. Now the same company next, they created a new program that came out of this. Their employers are at home and they're in a stressful environment, like most of us, of course. And they found that their employees are working late into the night, and productivity was up, but they weren't taking time for the family. And so they're trying to find ways to bring more balance. And so they created a program where they were going to, the employees could opt in to a weekly cooking class, and the company would announce the meal of the week where participants could have ingredients shipped to them, and local restaurants would provide virtual cooking classes via webinar, and it would be like a family affair. They can get together, prepare a meal together, and as a way to increase morale. So a lot of things out there. All right, so a quick recap. I know I went through a lot of things real quickly, but we talked about the business ecosystem, and this is something that you need to remember. The company, coworkers, and customers need to be thought about in its own ecosystem. We can't just sacrifice our coworkers and think our business is not going to suffer. Very important concept. The next is understanding what your workforce values, so you can optimize your reward spend, the cost on compensation and benefits, so you're delivering the most value. And then then also taking advantage of those effective award solutions as soon as possible. So let's go into the free gift I was telling you about. Now, this is, I'm offering a complimentary workforce experience scorecard that you can do. And so if you're interested in this, you can go to this link that I'm showing here, and what I'll do is I'll send you the scorecard. It's a form that you can fill out, and it'll give us some information that we can talk to. We can jump on a one-on-one call after that, so we can learn more about your unique situation and gather those key inputs. And we'll plug that into the system, and we'll come out with some direction about what may be some easy wins for you in the immediate environment. And so we can do this to help you get back on track as we go back into the workforce in this recovery phase. So obviously there's many things here, many people on the call right now. So this is on a first come, first served basis. And, but we'll try to offer this as complimentary as many people as we can. So if you're interested, please go to this link. And at this time, we can open up for questions.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Great gift, Sam. Thank you so much. I do have a question, actually. When I was an HR leader with Banner Health, we had a process of, with our new hires as well as our employees, of doing a survey or an assessment and ask personally what each either employee or new hire, how they like to be rewarded and compensated. Because oftentimes we were struggling even back in those many years ago, where, you know, we were only getting about 2 to 4% increases or 3 to 5% increases. Well, particularly during this time, companies might not be able to afford those increases. So what are your thoughts about doing like an assessment to see what your employees are really wanting to be rewarded and compensated?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's super important. And if you have the ability to do so, now realize that companies in the past have we've seen these cafeteria type plans where people in benefits where they're choosing what they would like to do as on their benefit programs. So a lot of progressive companies are doing this with their compensation programs as well. So what drives your behavior most? Is it would you prefer a larger base pay, or would you like a bonus program? And depending on the type of company or industry or the people that you hire, you'll see certain trends that are more meaningful to them. So there's different offerings that can be done there. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, getting employee feedback is very important, especially if you're thinking about doing a cost cut or a pay cut or a particular or layoff. I mean, asking your employees, you know, it's like we're in being real with them and transparent, and saying we're coming to we have the opportunity to, you know, or would you prefer to have a pay cut, or would you prefer that we go down this layoff and preserve some of that? So that happened. They found that companies in 2008 that were given those options during the last recession, the companies that were given that choice, the employees were far more engaged and bought in to the process and understood the pain that had to take place, and were much more receptive. And it didn't damage the future hiring. It actually helped improve retention in the future. And also companies that were more transparent with their metrics and business performance has more understanding in their employees when they have to do something like that.
Excellent points. I think transparency and honesty is so vital. Any other comments from my panelist team?
I wanted to, there's a couple themes that are going on in the chat, Sam, that I just wanted to call out. I think a lot of interesting ideas are being discussed, and there was a real hot button around this whole thing of when leaders set the tone by taking the first hit, you know, on their own paycheck. That really sends a message to the whole organization and its employees. And the pieces that you spoke about there and examples with your clients, I think were really hitting home here. A couple of comments that I wanted to offer is Summit says, instead of salary cuts, would it be a good idea to analyze vacation hours and their cost and request employees to donate a percentage of available hours? Is that something that you're seeing in your client pool and how they're handling that? Or, also organizations could use this pool of hours in emergencies for employees who need to be in hospitals but don't have any leave left.
Yeah, so it's important. So there's been employees that are volunteering, giving some time to other employees that are sick or in need, and that's been very helpful. But the real risk that some companies are facing is that if somebody donates their time and then they get sick later on, they need that time, then there needs to be some flexibility there. So I think that it's a time for us to be more flexible with all these programs and rethink them in this current environment, because of course these leave programs were based on a normal non-pandemic type of situation. So we need to rethink about how we're using these all together.
And just a quick question, do you see companies, like, what's the trend around unlimited vacation looking like in your experience? Because that's something that I thought of when I saw that suggestion, is that, are we seeing, that becoming irrelevant just because people can take whatever time they need?
Yeah, so the interesting part of the unlimited vacation, of course, right now there's, like I said, there's the pandemic is changing the rules at this particular moment. If we get back to a business as usual, if that comes into some sort of flavor like the past, the problem with unlimited vacation is that a lot of people feel guilty with taking their time because they don't know what time is appropriate. And they feel like that if they take too much time, they're going to be judged by their peers, or, and so then you have those people that just never want to take vacation. And so it's setting certain norms of what's even if you have unlimited, setting norms of what's appropriate, and guidelines around that is very important.
That's great. So may I interject here? I would like to just do the conclusion wrap up because we're only a few minutes away from the end of the hour, but I wanted to let everyone know that we stay on after this forum, and we can continue to discuss and have dialogue at least for the next 10 or 15 minutes after the end of the hour. So just wanted to mention that. But I wanted to say in conclusion, we've discussed so many excellent topics today on people strategy and the response to COVID-19. And as you can see, there's so much more that we can discuss. Just wanted to mention to you that following this meeting, Sam will be sharing on compteam.net the recorded webinar, also all the hard copy, and also the gifts, which, boy, we had. Thank you all, Julie, Linda, Sam, for all the great gifts today. All those helpful resources for you that are at no cost are going to be located there as well. We invite you to our next webinar, People Strategy webinar. As long as there is a demand for this, we're going to continue providing this free resource and providing this help to you. We have some excellent speakers coming up, so definitely want to tune in to these every week. Also, if you could give us feedback about any future topics that you would like to hear about. I spend a lot of time networking constantly and talking to other people strategy leaders and consultants, and always sourcing other speakers in the future. So let us know. And then also communicate with us on the various websites that we're sharing, any additional questions that you want us to address. And then also, please, please, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Connect with us on our social media platforms. All of us have that. And also, I suggest if you go to compteam.net, you're going to see our prior speakers and some of our repeat speakers like Linda and Lisa that have come back and helped us through this. So connect with us. And then we will also share many of these resources on our social media platforms as well. So now it's 11:29. So we can now open up for more dialogue and conversation, and we'll hang on as long as anyone's interested in participating. So I also want to bring up, hey, Julie. I think one of the things that I'm wondering about is this whole Zoom fatigue thing. Here we are doing a Zoom, Am I fatigued? What do you think about it?
I'm not fatigued usually by now. I'm fatigued by about 3 o'clock this afternoon, you know. I think that, you know, you actually posted something in the chat, Shar, that I think is excellent, that you're limiting your Zoom meetings to particular days of the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hard part is that we're not always in control of when the Zoom meetings are scheduled. So I think it's really, I found that the first 3 weeks of this, of the shelter in place, I was on Zoom some days 12 hours. And just my eyes hurt, my body was, I was exhausted. I was so exhausted, I couldn't even see straight. And so what I started doing was being really mindful and particular about what I was saying yes to on the Zoom. And it's a real thing. The Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And so I think also if you're a meeting coordinator, if you're putting things together, to be mindful about how long your event is, or how, you know, so that you are, and if it is longer, how do you give people breaks to get them away from the computer and trust them to come back? Because I think that's some of the fear, is that people think they'll lose them forever if they let them have a, you know, a 45-minute break or something, if it's an all-day event. But if you as a participant in your own in your own day can be very mindful about the Zoom fatigue and what are you saying yes to? Is it essential for you? If it's networking, if it's something like this educational platform, and what I've even taken some things where I'm just listening on my phone. If I don't have to participate and I can just listen, I will do it on my phone and just have it on speaker so that I don't have to be under this light and in front of the screen. So I think it's a real concern. We've all had all this screen time awareness for our kids, and now we're experiencing it. And so what can we do to place boundaries around ourselves and how much we're in front of the screens? Because it is something that we have to, it's a new boundary that we have to set.
Right. And Linda, you know, this ties to you're an expert in EQ, right? Emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And so I think part of the Zoom fatigue is also about the nonverbals and paying attention and being empathetic. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I really identify with what Julie was saying in the questions, because you can actually, if we're aware of ourselves and what's happening, that can lead to such fatigue that being self-aware and letting people take a Zoomcation, right? A vacation away from Zoom. So maybe they just do come in on audio, but being really intentional about when you want to connect, because we know seeing each other, our nonverbals, all of that can help us connect, but it can also help us take a shower that day. But, you know, being really intentional about that and giving people a break. Let's just all go audio today, or maybe we'll have some nice scenery on the screen and you can sit back and just, we have information to share. So really being self-aware, both of myself and others, and having some empathy with others' perspectives, because we don't know what they're going through quite often. So that can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very good points. And then also, I think one of the things on Julie's comments, sometimes I do like, here's my planner, and I have all my little to-do. Isn't this a mess? But I have all my Zoom meetings and I have all my little one-on-ones, and I can't even keep track of who I'm talking to right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your ideas about maybe tracking successes versus tracking things to do?
Well, I actually have a whole presentation on how do you pare down your to-do list and turn it into a success list. Because a to-do list, we could put everything and anything on a to-do list. And so if you can switch it and pick, my rule of thumb is 3, and I talked about 3 even in my presentation today. If you could pick 3 things that you must do today in order to know that you moved the needle, that you will feel successful at the end of the day, that you did something that will drive your success. Those are and things that only you can do. There are things that no one else can possibly do. And you got to get out of your own head that some things other people can do, right? You can delegate some things that you are choosing not to delegate. And so if you can take that brain dump and those things that you are saying that you need to do and start discriminating around what will bring you success, I think that can change your feeling of having to like check 50 things today.
Mm-hmm.
That's helpful.
Hello, everyone. I would like to introduce you to Sumit. He was really participative in our chat here. And Sumit, you mentioned that you had a few examples from that you've heard from your consulting practice.
So yes, I was mentioning examples from.
And I'm sorry, Sumit. One thing, just since this is if you go ahead and introduce us and tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Sure, I'm sorry. Hi everyone. Good morning. I'm Sumit. I work with Sam on a few things here and there. It's been a great learning experience for me for the last few months that we've been together. And I've been working in consulting for about 15 or 16 years now, and have worked with some of the bigger names in the industry, including Aon, Accenture, Deloitte, and a few others. So I know what we're going through is absolutely unprecedented in terms of size and scale. And while it's a huge crisis, I think there's also a lot to learn. And the good thing is, and that's what we were discussing on chat, there are lots of positive examples as well, apart from negativity and failures to discuss. And some of the things that I'm seeing here, I'm based in India, by the way. So examples of companies like Deloitte, where they've said that as of now, there's no salary cut that's happening, and promotions that they were considering will go ahead. So there's no stop on merit-based promotions from last year. And Deloitte runs their cycle from July to June. So this is absolutely the fag end of the year for them. And promotions get decided by around March. So April is when they start making the announcements, and they've said that they're not going to hold back on the promotions. GE is another organization that I'm a huge fan of. They're organizing regular employee forums, and they have something called a happy hour every Friday, where they spend about an hour just talking about non-work stuff. So you could talk about the fact that the internet's been really slow and it's annoying you because Netflix isn't really working as quick as you'd like it to, or the fact that managing your toddler is becoming quite a pain. And Julie, the 12 hours of Zoom that you mentioned stretched to 14 or 15 hours because there are children or dogs and cats in the background. So people talk about all these kinds of things. And while the organization has announced job cuts, so they're in the process of letting go of around 20% of their workforce, but they're trying to do this with the utmost dignity and respect for people who are being let go of. They're also organizing assistance programs for the survivors who are undergoing survivor's guilt right now. And they've also extended this to friends and family. So in case somebody from an employee's family wants to attend some counseling sessions, they're free to do so. And earlier they used to have a cap on the number of counseling sessions you could take in a quarter. They've done away with the limit as well. So those are some of the bigger things that are happening there. Already mentioned the Accenture example, where you're free to, I mean, if I'm an employee who's undergoing any kind of crisis and I need somebody to give me some vacation or leave hours, because otherwise I'll have to go on leave without pay, I can request, and absolute strangers. There are 400,000 people in the organization. They're free to donate some of their hours to me. And it's a fixed percentage, so you cannot donate more than a certain percentage of your available hours. So if tomorrow you're the one in need, it's not like you will have to step into the program as well. So I think, Sam, that's the concern you were highlighting. So I think that the guidelines already take care of it.
Great. Thanks, Sumit. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Excellent point of view. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for helping us with all of our marketing initiatives. So that's great. So excellent. So is there any other additional comments or questions? Don't really see much more at this point. So, well, this has been super fantastic. As I always say, I appreciate everybody participating. And again, thank you, Sam, for your leadership and helping us with these sessions and sponsoring this through CompTeam. And again, I encourage everybody to go out to compteam.net and you'll see all the prior recordings. And this particular recording, I understand, will be downloaded within about 48 hours or so.
That's
Okay?
right.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate you. Be well. Take care. And we will see you on our next People Strategy Forum next week. We have an outstanding speaker coming next week and more detail to come on LinkedIn. So watch for that. All right. Thank you all and take care and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.